Hello, music makers. Welcome back. Do you know this track, Shine On by Degrees of Motion? I hope so. Absolute classic. Anyway, have you ever had the thought that Shine On reminds you a little bit of deadmau5's I Remember? No? Well, neither have I. But it turns out they use the same chord principles. And seeing as viewer Red Wild has asked me to reveal the secrets of this chord progression, that means I get to make a video nerding out on great chords while you guys learn how to make your tracks more interesting. Let's go. I do like the way our viewer used the word secrets here, as chord-wise, it's certainly not obvious to figure out without a lot of ear training. But also, despite being a cult classic, there's not actually that much known about Degrees of Motion. We have writing credits, but no juicy info on the making of the tracks themselves. If anyone watching this knows anything, please let me know down below. All I can tell you is they are definitely a gospel group. Not just because the vocals though. These chord choices are definitely the mark of a seasoned musician. Church bands basically spend every session jamming, and it's different every time. So not only are the members usually used to playing live, but they're very adaptable too. Anyway, let's get onto those chords. I imagine for anyone attempting to get these chords by ear, you might find the home key quite easily. If you have a feel around on the keys, you'll probably eventually land on E as the home key. So it definitely seems like E, but E what? Because even if you get the bass notes right, you'll find if you try to put chords on them, it's impossible to get them all to fit. For example, here's what E minor sounds like. The first and last chords don't fit. Here's major. Yuck. So it's neither major or minor. But I'll save you the bother, it's not in any one scale. As I alluded to earlier, it's the same idea I showed in the deadmau5 video. In that video, I described this technique as multitonal, or as a musician might know it as modal interchange. Now, if you're falling asleep on me from too many musical terms, sorry, they're just fancy names for scale swapping. Basically, you can think of it as just flipping between major and minor. Let's have a look at the main progression. So the easiest way to look at this is comparing against the notes of E minor. Nice and easy to remember because it's just all the white notes except F. F is an F sharp instead. So it turns out all of these chords are from E minor. And it's only these, the one chord, and the last chord, which are from E major. So we can think about this as basically just E minor except chord 1 is major, with the exception of this last bit here. Let's talk about that, because both of these are chord 5, but we have one of them minor and one of them major. What the hell is that all about? Well, it's basically what I described in the garage chord trick video. There's more than one type of minor scale, and some of them have a major chord 5. So it's not that unusual to swap between them. If you want to know why it works, it's all down to a thing called voice leading. I explain it in that video. I'll link it in the description. Meanwhile, let's take a closer look at these chords, extensions and voicings, etc. So here's the main progression as just basic triads. This is the intro version. It changes slightly in the other choruses, so we'll look at that one after this. But here's how it starts. As I showed earlier, we've got chord 1 as major, which is E major. Chords 4 and 5, which is A minor, B minor. Back to E major, and again with the A minor. Then we end with a kind of turnaround section, which is a 4-5-6-5. So that's A minor, B minor, C major, back down to B, but swapped to major. As for voicings, it's quite straightforward. First of all, we get an extra root note for each chord, 1 octave down. Then for the one chords, this root is inverted to the top, so it shares that common tone of the E with the next chord. And then for all the other chords, they all get 7th extensions. But instead of adding them to the top, the old root notes are just moved down one. That's the same note as the 7th. We still have the root at the bottom there, and there's a bass part playing, obviously, so we can have the 7th in the middle of the chord here. And then the only change in the final track is this last chord starts to move rhythmically with the drum fill. Resolving to that major 1 there. And then the track just goes down to vocals, bass, and drums. Let's quickly talk about the verse. So the verse has this 1, 4, and 5, the same as the intro, and it repeats that twice. But the interesting bit is the bass. When it's just vocals, bass, and drums, the bass is moving, implying the same chord change. Well, this is a 1, 4, 7, not a 1, 4, 5. However, when the piano chords come in, the bass plants on the 1. There's a musical term for this. It's called pedal bass. This not only plants the bottom end nicely, but it's building tension that is released when the bass and chords finally move together in the chorus. Let's look at that chorus. So believe it or not, this is the same chords, fundamentally at least. There is a rhythm change, of course. It's got that bouncing pattern, but there are a couple of alterations. To make it easier to look at, I've got the same chords here, but I've deleted the rhythm. As you can see, the first chord is the same, that E major. The move to chord 4 is slightly different, whereas before the 7th replaced the root, now both are in place. These two notes next to one another, this kind of voicing is a bit more crunchy sounding because of that clash. And that's one of the main changes. This type of voicing is in all the other chords except that 1 chord. So we have that doubling up of the root note, and it's alongside that 7th. The other main change is this chord 5 here, the B minor. You'll notice there's a D at the bottom now, and the bass part is also playing a D. But this is still technically the B minor chord. It's the same 4 notes as before. We have the B, the D, the F sharp, and the A. That's still a B minor 7th, but now because we have a D in the bass and not a B, this is called an inversion. There's also this extra F sharp in there. I'm not sure why that's needed, but it adds a little bit of thickness, I suppose. And there's this leading line here. As for the rest of the progression, we go back to chord 1, then 4, the same as the beginning here. Then the B minor 7, the chord 5, that's here again. Almost the same voicing. It has that extra F sharp in there, the 5th note of the chord. That's in there, but we're no longer on a D. It's back to its original root of B. Then that voicing is carried into this chord 6 here, the C major 7. As you can see, it's got that extra 5th in there. And then to lead us back to the 1 is that major chord 5. As far as I could tell, there's no extra 5th in this one, but it's got that extra root. So now you understand the chords a little better. Let's listen to the original part and you can observe the rhythm. So that's the main chord progression out of the way. The only other chords to discuss in this track is the pre-chorus. This is a classic rising progression to get us into chord 1. It's 4, 5, 6, 7, with the chorus dropping on 1. The 4, 5, and 6 are all the same I just showed you in the chorus. The only difference is we have a chord 7 here, whereas in the chorus, this is the bit that drops to that major chord 5. However, just like that turnaround, this is no ordinary turnaround either. It's not a normal chord 7. In fact, this is the someday chord. I did a whole video on this one too. It's basically a chord 6 over a bass note of 7. Same as the famous chord in Someday. Or if you're a Bill Bailey fan, you'll know this as the smug chord.
Patronising and smug.
As you can see at the top, the chord stays the same. This is still our chord 6, which is a C major 7th, but the bass moves up to note 7, D. Go and watch the Someday chord video if you want a deeper dive into that. Okie dokie, there are the chords for Shine On by Degrees of Motion. I hope you learned something. If you did, you know what to do. like, share, subscribe, or there's a link in the description to buy me a coffee if you're feeling generous. Anyway, until next week, I will see you in the comments. Bye-bye.